Last year, I tried the FODMAP elimination diet, and to my surprise, it made some of my lifelong health issues almost completely go away. My nausea, lack of appetite, occasional gut issues, but also my chronic headaches, which I had absolutely not expected, as well as some of my fatigue and migraines. Learning just that made doing this diet completely worth it for me. However, it is a very difficult diet and is not a healthy long-term solution at all. It might even be part of the reason why I'm struggling a little bit even now, because I stayed on it a bit too long. So let me take you through what the diet is and my experience with it, how it helped me, what it taught me, and what I'm doing right now to handle my IBS while still trying to eat as diverse and healthy a diet as I can. First of all, this is not medical advice. I'm just talking about my experiences with this. I will always say, if any of this sounds familiar to you, these issues, go talk to your doctor or a dietitian, because they're the ones that really will help you figure out, hopefully, what's going on. For me, I eventually ended up going to a dietitian because I had weird, mysterious sort of issues, but not bad enough to do much about, for as long as I can remember. Occasionally, I'd get these really long bouts of nausea. I'd have upset my stomach with something, but the nausea would stick about. And then at one point, I had an active job and this was going on. I was nauseous for 2 weeks, and in the end, I think I only ate like bananas, rice, and a bit of yogurt or something like that. And I'd lost a lot of weight. It was very unhealthy. I went to the doctor and they were like, oh, don't know, can't do anything about that. So here are some anti-nausea meds and come back if they don't work. Well, they worked. I wasn't nauseous anymore and I could eat again. And then eventually that was fine. But the past couple of years, I've been trying to look after myself better. So then when I got nauseous again for days on end, I just didn't want to risk losing that much weight again. So I went to the dietitian on my own accord, skipped the doctor, went straight to a dietitian, and they suggested trying the low FODMAP diet just to see if maybe that was an issue, because that's the easiest step without any medical tests to eliminate something. And if that changes your situation, then you know the issue is there. Now, FODMAP stands for, and I'm reading this bit, fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. Those are types of carbs, mainly in plants, that if you don't digest them well, they end up in your gut and they ferment there, and that causes bloating, gas, all the fantastic gut issues. This diet is meant to eliminate those and then systematically reintroduce them so you can pinpoint what you might be intolerant to. It's not meant as a permanent diet. You're supposed to, at the end, add back in as much as you can tolerate so you get all the nutrients you need. So there's 3 phases: the elimination phase, the reintroduction phase, and the personalisation phase. So at the start of this, I just wanted to get rid of the nausea. I didn't want to have that happen again. I didn't want to keep losing weight all the time. And I wanted my appetite back. And the first step that the dietitian had me do was just track my normal diet for a month to see if anything really stood out and to have something to compare to later. Then after that month, we started the elimination phase. This was late October last year, and the goal was to cut out everything that irritates the gut so your gut can heal and calm down. And later, when you reintroduce something, you can really tell if something is triggering your gut or not, because if you're feeling off all the time, it's hard to distinguish. Now, what makes this diet very hard is that the list of things you have to exclude is very, very long. There's lots of vegetables, fruits, grains, beans and the like, some nuts, lactose, and you have to be strict with it. Because regardless if you eat something on the list, and so even if it doesn't irritate your gut noticeably, you have to start over again. You have to reset, because you want to really, really make sure you've eliminated everything for a long enough period of time for your gut to settle, and you don't have any of that in you anymore. You don't have any symptoms, no nothing. You want a baseline. And if you eat something from that list in that time, well, that's that work undone. You have to start over again. So it makes going out for dinner very hard. You basically have to make your own food because almost everything that's ready-made has one of these FODMAPs in there. Luckily, there's things like the Monash University app. That's the university that actually researches FODMAPs, and they've got an app where they keep, and they've got an app where they update their results. So I think it was just a couple of euros, best couple of euros I spent the last couple of years. And there you can just look up, is this okay for me to have or not? And you get the most up-to-date information via that app. So that's definitely good to have if you're trying this diet. This can go on for 2 to 6 weeks, depending on when your symptoms stop. Now, for me, that started at about the 4-week mark. I think I'm fine. And what really amazed me is I was focused on the nausea, but at the same time, some of the gut issues I had before, I hadn't realized that they might be linked to IBS, which was a bit silly in hindsight, but for me, this had become normal. You have to remember that. But also, my chronic headaches were gone. And I'd had headaches every week for as long as I can remember. I was one of those people who had strips of paracetamol in every single bag I owned, stashes everywhere in my house, at the office. But I also considered that not abnormal because my dad is the same. Now, he's never going to do this diet, but yeah, I wonder. And a lot of my fatigue was fixed, and I hadn't had a migraine in a month. And okay, sometimes I had months without migraines, but I had reasonably frequent migraines. So I did not know that could also be part of IBS. Now, I've since done some more reading, and it just made very clear to me how important that gut-mind link is. This influences everything. So yeah, I got a practical demonstration on that. And then we stayed on the diet for another 2 weeks to let everything settle and heal. And by the end of it, the result was I knew I was definitely intolerant to something. I just didn't know what. Then in November, I started the reintroduction phase to find out what was triggering me. Now, this is where you reintroduce something from those FODMAP groups one at a time. You start with a small quantity, then I think it was double that quantity, and then you've got triple that quantity until you react or not. And then you reset again for a couple of days. So you're back on the elimination diet again to have everything settle again before you try the next thing. This part of the diet is mentally hard, I found, because you're basically making yourself sick on purpose, or at least you have the expectation that at some point you will end up sick. And you don't want that, obviously, because you won't feel good, but you do want that because that's information. But that still makes it not fun. For me, unfortunately, it turns out I react to several FODMAPs. So the worst one is fructans. That's in wheat, other grains, vegetables, fruit, a whole bunch of things. And that's the one that gave me the headaches, the nausea, the migraines, generally feeling like I'm about to have the flu. So for me, that's the worst one. But then you've also got lactose. I don't react very well to. I can have some. For all of these, I can have some, but not very much. And mannitol, so that's in cauliflower, mushrooms, but it's also a sweetener. You see in a lot of sugar-free stuff. Don't react well to that, but not too badly. That mainly gives you gut issues. And sorbitol, which is in apples, a bunch of other fruits, some vegetables, again, cauliflower, cabbage, also sweeteners. And that gives me a different type of gut issue, which was also interesting that I react differently to the different FODMAPs, and the dietitian hadn't seen that before. So this part of the diet taught me what FODMAPs were fine and what not. And for those specific things I tested, what amounts of it I could have. So I could have, or at that point, I could have 1 slice of bread, but not 2. And then you have the personalization phase. And for me, that started in January. So that's quite a bit later. But in the meantime, I'd also gone on holiday. So the holiday was tricky, but I was lucky enough to travel with someone who was quite picky about their food. So we were both fine just raiding supermarkets and going, okay, I've got my safe crackers. What kind of cheeses and fish and bits and pieces can we get? And then we just have hotel picnics. But that worked pretty well. And then when we got back, I started the personalization phase. And what you want to do there is expand your diet with everything you can have. So you're getting as diverse food as possible, get all the nutrients you need. So you have to find out what amounts of specific ingredients you can have or what combinations, because the tricky thing is these FODMAPs can also stack. So if you know, I can have that ingredient with fructans in it, and I know I can have 1 slice of that bread. If you then add something else with fructans in it, you go over that limit and you might upset yourself, which makes it very tricky, very complicated. And this is the phase where I got stuck because I kept trying things and very often I upset my gut again. So I ended up feeling ill. And then you don't want to feel ill and everything's difficult because your diet's still very limited. And if you go places, you have to figure out food. You can't just eat whatever you find anywhere. And that meant for me, eventually I stopped trying that hard. So for months and months, I was still eating a slightly expanded version of the limited diet, but not expanded enough. And at some point I noticed I was starting to get anxious about food. And I'd never had that before because I'm lucky enough to have grown up with, plenty of access to food, no issues there. But I was starting to get worried when I didn't have enough pre-prepared foods, that I knew were safe for me with me, or snacks. And if you're going somewhere, you need to take everything with me, and we're running low on food when we weren't running low on food. And I didn't like that. So that was not healthy for me physically or mentally. And as I mentioned before, I am trying to really work on my health and fitness. So a couple of months back, I went back to a different dietitian who's very specifically experienced in this and fitness, to try and expand my diet again. And it turns out because I was on the limited diet for so long, I might have made myself more sensitive to these triggers as well, because at some point you're just not used to them anymore. Your gut's not used to them anymore. So what I'm doing now is try to expand my diet with the help of the dietitian, by adding in really small quantities of things and trying to eat as diverse a diet as possible within what I'm comfortable with right now, to train my gut to make it used to these different things again. And then we'll very slowly expand. But for now, we're being gentle. And so far, that's working quite well. And I actually made a video on trying to eat 30 different plants a week for 4 weeks. So you can go see that if you want, because I'm still doing that. That's part of this. And that did make me a bit more confident in what I eat. And also, trying to eat more. And I'm trying to train for a half marathon as well, in part. So just fitness, but also to create more of an appetite so I can eat more and eventually train myself to eat larger quantities. So I can go to the gym, build muscle, become more healthy for later on. Because I'm 38. I want to go into my 40s fit and healthy. That's one of my midlife crisis goals right now. Overall, right now, I feel a lot better, and it's really night and day. At this point, I still upset my gut sometimes. When I eat something wrong, I feel I could really tell with the headache, the nausea, the tiredness, and that's now my least favorite thing, because the nausea doesn't stick around quite as much anymore, but the fatigue, that really hits. But overall, it's much better than before. Would I recommend the FODMAP elimination diet? If you have gut issues, fatigue, nausea, maybe headaches on top of that, I would always recommend you go see a doctor. And if that doesn't work, go see a dietitian directly. And if they then suggest this as an option, then yes, I definitely, because it's hard, but it's not invasive. And it really taught me a lot about myself, and it really helped figure myself out. It's not a long-term solution, so definitely try to keep this as brief a period as possible before you expand your diet again, because that's not a healthy thing otherwise. But yeah, I don't regret this at all. Let me know in the comments if you've tried the FODMAP elimination diet and how that went for you, because I'd be really interested. And at the moment, I'm documenting this journey, so trying to handle IBS while also training for that half marathon, both with the goal of going into my 40s a fitter, more healthy person. So if that interests you, please subscribe, and I'll see you again another time. Bye-bye.